In the heart of the Sahara, a renowned explorer lies dead in his tent, poisoned, his prized gilded compass shattered. Hercule Poirot, the master detective, steps into a web of deception among a rival driven by ambition, a secretive Bedouin guide, and a fearful young porter. As the dunes whisper secrets of a lost tomb, Poirot unravels a deadly plot of greed and betrayal, racing against time to uncover the truth before the desert buries it forever. Will he find the tomb of Anuket, or will the murderer's shadow strike again? Chapter 1. The Desert Encampment. The Sahara stretched endlessly before Hercule Poirot, a sea of amber dunes sculpted by a merciless wind. The air shimmered with heat, and each gust carried a fine mist of sand that clung to his meticulously pressed suit. Yet Poirot stood undaunted, his small, neat figure a stark contrast to the wild expanse. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, scanned the horizon, where a cluster of canvas tents huddled like an oasis of civilization. He adjusted his broad-brimmed hat, ensuring not a speck of dust marred his moustache, and turned to his companion, Captain Arthur Hastings, who was less composed, his face flushed beneath his pith helmet. "Confound it, Poirot," Hastings muttered, swatting at a persistent fly. "This is no place for a gentleman. Why on earth did you agree to come to this god-forsaken desert?" Poirot's lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile. "Mon cher Hastings, you forget the method of Hercule Poirot. I am here at the behest of Professor Elias Wentworth, a man of great learning and greater secrets. His telegram spoke of a matter most grave. A question, perhaps, of life and death. Such a summons cannot be ignored." Hastings mopped his brow with a handkerchief already stained with dust. "Life and death? Sounds like one of your mysteries, Poirot. But what could be so urgent in this blasted wilderness?" Poirot did not reply at once, his gaze fixed on the approaching figure of their guide, Khalil, a Bedouin whose robes flowed like the dunes themselves. Khalil's dark eyes were unreadable, but his gesture was urgent, beckoning them toward the largest tent in the encampment. Poirot's polished shoes sank slightly into the sand as he followed, his mind already turning over the sparse details of Wentworth's message. "Danger threatens. Trust no one. Come at once." The tent's interior was dim, the air heavy with the musty scent of canvas and something sharper, more sinister. A camp bed stood at the center, and upon it lay Professor Elias Wentworth, his body still, his face frozen in a grimace of pain. His right hand clutched a gilded compass, its ornate casing cracked, the glass face shattered, the needle bent at an unnatural angle. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the corpse as if to trace the invisible threads of the crime. He noted the professor's sallow skin, the faint bluish tinge around his lips, and the rigidity of his limbs. "Poison," Poirot murmured, his voice low, almost reverent. "Administered, I estimate, within the last 12 hours. The little grey cells, they do not deceive." Hastings, standing at a respectful distance, paled. "Poison? You mean murder, Poirot?" "Précisément, mon ami." Poirot's eyes flicked to the broken compass, its golden edges catching the faint light filtering through the tent. "And this compass wasn't merely dropped. It was destroyed with purpose. It speaks, Hastings, to those who listen." Hastings frowned, his practical mind grappling with the scene. "But why break a compass? Surely it's just a tool for navigation." Poirot rose, dusting his knees with a fastidious flick of his hand. "A tool, yes, but for what journey?" Professor Wentworth sought the tomb of Anuket, a legend whispered to hold treasures of gold and jewels hidden for millennia. This compass, I suspect, was more than it seems. Come, let us examine further. The tent was a scholar's haven, cluttered with maps, star charts, and journals stacked precariously on a folding desk. A half-empty teacup sat beside a lantern, its contents cold and untouched. Poirot lifted the cup, sniffing delicately, his moustache twitching as he detected a faint, bitter undertone beneath the scent of a chamomile. He set it down with care, then turned to the journals. Wentworth's handwriting was meticulous, each page a testament to his obsession with the tomb. One entry, dated the previous day, stood out. The compass is the key. Its secret must be guarded, for others covet what I am near to finding. Poirot closed the journal with a snap, his eyes narrowing. The professor knew he was in peril. Someone in this camp desired his secret and his death. We must meet these companions of his, Hastings, for among them lies the hand that struck. Outside, the sun blazed, casting harsh shadows across the encampment. Khalil waited, his silence as impenetrable as the desert itself. Poirot's gaze lingered on him for a moment before he addressed Hastings. Observe, mon ami, the stillness of this place. It is like the calm before the storm. The truth is here, in the sand, in the silence, in the broken compass, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it. Hastings, still uneasy, managed a nod. I hope you're right, Poirot. But this place, it gives me the creeps. Poirot's smile was serene. Fear not, Hastings. The desert may be vast, but the mind of Poirot is vaster still. Chapter 2. The cast of the camp, the sun hung low over the Sahara, painting the dunes in hues of crimson and gold, as Hercule Poirot stepped from the shadowed interior of Professor Wentworth's tent into the blinding light of the encampment. The air was thick with heat, and the wind, ever restless, carried whispers of sand that danced around his polished shoes. Captain Arthur Hastings trailed behind, his face a mixture of discomfort and curiosity, his pith helmet tilted slightly, askew. The tragedy of Wentworth's death hung over the camp like a shroud, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the human heart, knew that the truth lay not in the sand, but in the souls of those who stood before him. The mess tent, a sturdy canvas structure anchored against the desert's whims, served as the gathering place for the expedition's remaining members. Its interior was sparse yet functional, with a long trestle table cluttered with tin mugs, a battered teapot, and a scattering of maps. The faint aroma of boiled coffee mingled with the dry scent of dust, creating an atmosphere both homely and oppressive. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small stature commanding the space as if he were addressing a courtroom. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, surveyed the three figures seated before him, each a study in contrast, each a potential key to the puzzle of Wentworth's murder. Dr. Leonard Crane sat with his arms crossed, his lean frame taut with barely concealed impatience. His hawkish nose and thin lips gave him the air of a predator, and his eyes, a pale grey, flickered with defiance. He was a man in his late 40s, his reputation as an archaeologist marred by whispers of ruthlessness, a scholar who prized glory above ethics. Beside him sat Amira, the expedition's Bedouin guide, her posture erect, her dark eyes steady as they met Poirot's gaze. Her robes, woven with intricate patterns, seemed to blend with the desert itself, and her silence carried the weight of unspoken knowledge. At the table's end, Yusuf, the young porter, fidgeted with a length of coarse rope, his broad shoulders hunched as if to ward off scrutiny. His youthful face, barely past 20, was etched with unease, his dark eyes darting between his companions and the ground. Poirot cleared his throat, a delicate sound that nonetheless silenced the rustle of canvas and the murmur of the wind. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice precise, each word polished like a gem. "A crime most foul has been committed. Professor Elias Wentworth, a man of learning and purpose, lies dead, poisoned in his tent. His compass, a thing of beauty and significance, was deliberately broken. I, Hercule Poirot, have taken it upon myself to unravel this mystery. But I require your cooperation. The truth, it hides in the shadows of your words, your glances, your silences. Speak, if you please, of your movements last night." Dr. Crane's laugh was sharp, a bark that cut through the tension. "This is preposterous, Monsieur Poirot. Wentworth was an old man, frail and obsessed. The desert is no place for such weakness. He likely succumbed to heat stroke or some ailment. You speak of poison, but where is your proof?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement or disdain. Hastings could never quite tell. "The proof, Dr. Crane, is in the blue tinge of the professor's lips, the rigidity of his limbs, the faint bitterness in his teacup. Poison, monsieur, is unmistakable to those who observe with care. Now your movements, if you please." Crane's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the table. "Very well. I was in my tent, cataloguing artifacts from our latest dig. Pottery shards mostly. Nothing of value, but Wentworth insisted on recording every fragment. I worked until midnight, then slept. I saw no one, spoke to no one." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you, Mademoiselle Amira? The desert is your domain. Where were you when the professor met his end?" Amira's voice was low, measured, as if each word were weighed before it left her lips. "I was scouting a new route to the western oasis under the moonlight. The professor wished to explore it tomorrow. I returned to camp near dawn, after the stars had faded." Poirot's eyes lingered on her, noting the calm precision of her words, the absence of hesitation. "And did you see anything unusual, mademoiselle? A figure moving in the dark, perhaps? A sound out of place?" Her gaze did not waver. "The desert is never silent, Monsieur Poirot. It speaks in whispers and cries. But I saw no one, heard nothing beyond the wind and the shifting sands." Poirot turned to Yusuf, whose hands had stilled, the rope now a tangled knot in his lap. "And you, Monsieur Yusuf? Your duties keep you close to the camp. What did you see or hear?" Yusuf swallowed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was with the camels, repairing a saddle. It was late, maybe 10 o'clock. I heard nothing, saw nothing. I swear it." Poirot's smile was gentle, almost paternal, but his eyes were unrelenting. "Nothing, monsieur. The camp is small, the tents close. A cry, a footstep, the breaking of glass. Surely something reached your ears." Yusuf's fingers tightened around the rope, his knuckles paling. I thought I heard something, like glass breaking, but it was faint. I was far from the professor's tent. I didn't think it important." Poirot's head tilted, a gesture Hastings knew well, a sign that a detail had been tucked away in the intricate machinery of his mind. "Merci, monsieur. Your memory, it is most helpful. Now, mes amis, I ask you to remain in the camp. The desert is vast, but the truth, it is closer than you think." As the trio dispersed, Crane, with a squall, Amira with measured steps, Yusuf with a nervous glance. Hastings leaned close to Poirot. "What do you make of them, Poirot?" Crane's as prickly as a cactus, Amira's cool as a cucumber, and Yusuf looks like he's seen a ghost. Poirot adjusted his cufflinks, a ritual that seemed absurdly out of place in the desert's chaos. "Each, Hastings, is a piece of the puzzle. Crane's defensiveness betrays ambition, perhaps envy. Amira's calm is a mask, but for what? Grief, guilt, or knowledge? And Yusuf, his fear is genuine. But is it of the crime or of the criminal? The little grey cells, they are at. Ach! The mess tent emptied, leaving Poirot and Hastings alone, with the maps and the lingering scent of coffee. Poirot approached the table, his fingers tracing the edges of a map marked with Wentworth's precise annotations. The professor had been charting a path to the tomb of Anuket, a legend dismissed by many, but pursued with fervour by Wentworth. The map showed a series of coordinates, each linked to a constellation visible only in this region. A small note in the margin read, "The compass points the way. Trust it alone." Poirot's eyes gleamed. This compass, Hastings, was no ordinary tool. It was Wentworth's guide to the tomb, perhaps calibrated to a specific anomaly, a magnetic field, a hidden marker. Its destruction was no act of chance. Someone wished to ensure the tomb remained lost. Hastings frowned, his mind struggling to keep pace. "But who, Poirot? Crane's the obvious choice, rivalry and all that. But Amira knows the desert better than anyone, and Yusuf's jumpy as a cat. Could they be in it together?" Poirot shook his head, his expression one of patient correction. "No, Hastings. The crime is singular, the motive precise. A conspiracy, it is possible but unlikely. The poison was administered with care, the compass broken with intent. We must look to the details, the teacup, the vial, the broken glass. They will lead us to the truth." He stepped outside, the dying light casting long shadows across the camp. The tents stood like sentinels, their canvas walls hiding secrets as surely as the dunes concealed the tomb. Poirot's gaze settled on Crane's tent, where a faint light flickered, then on Amira's, where no light shone at all. Yusuf was visible near the camels, his silhouette hunched as he worked. Poirot's mind, a labyrinth of order and method, began to weave the threads together. "Let us visit Dr. Crane's tent, Hastings," he said abruptly. "His cataloguing of artifacts interests me. A man so meticulous may have left a clue, even if he does not know it." Crane's tent was a stark contrast to Wentworth's. Where the professor's space was cluttered with scholarly passion, Crane's was a model of cold efficiency. Shelves lined with labelled boxes held pottery shards, bronze tools, and fragments of stone, each tagged with Crane's initials. A desk bore a single lamp, a notebook, and a small glass vial, its label smudged but faintly legible. Cyanide, medical use only. Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot! Cyanide! That's what killed Wentworth, isn't it?" Poirot's fingers hovered over the vial, not touching it. "Perhaps, Hastings. But this is too convenient, too obvious. A murderer does not leave his weapon in plain sight, unless he wishes it to be found. We must be cautious. Crane is clever, but is he so careless?" He opened the notebook, its pages filled with Crane's angular script. The entries detailed the expedition's finds, but one caught Poirot's eye. Wentworth's obsession with the compass grows intolerable. He guards it like a relic, but it will lead him nowhere. The date was 2 days prior, the tone laced with venom. Poirot closed the notebook with a snap. Crane knew of the compass's importance. His rivalry with Wentworth was not merely professional, it was personal. But is this enough to prove murder? They left the tent, the night now cloaking the camp in darkness. The stars above were brilliant, a celestial map that Wentworth had studied with devotion. Poirot paused, his head tilted as if listening to the desert's whispers. The stars, Hastings, they guided Wentworth, and the compass, it was his key. But someone turned that key against him. As they returned to their own tent, Hastings ventured, "What's next, Poirot? A mirror? Yusuf? Or do we dig deeper into Crane?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "We observe, Hastings. We listen. The desert is vast, but the human heart is vaster still. Each suspect has a story, and each story has a crack. It is through those cracks that Hercule Poirot will find the light of truth." The wind rose, carrying with it the faint sound of a camel's low moan and the rustle of canvas. Somewhere in the camp, a murderer waited, their secret buried in the sands of deception. But Poirot, with his unerring method, was already closing in. Chapter 3. The Broken Compass. The desert night had settled over the encampment, a velvet cloak studded with stars that seemed to mock the turmoil below. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the chill that crept through the canvas of his tent, sat at a small folding table, a single lantern casting a golden glow across his meticulous features. His green eyes, sharp as ever, were fixed on the broken compass that lay before him, its gilded casing glinting like a fallen star. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful shadow, stood by the tent's entrance, his silhouette framed against the flickering torchlight outside. The air was heavy with the scent of sand and mystery, and Poirot's mind was a whirl of precision, sifting through the fragments of the crime. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice a quiet command, "fetch me the magnifying glass from my case. The compass, it has much to tell us, if we but listen." Hastings, accustomed to Poirot's cryptic instructions, rummaged through the detective's meticulously packed valise, producing a small, polished magnifying glass. "Here you are, Poirot. But what can a broken compass possibly reveal? It's just a tool, isn't it? Smashed in a struggle, perhaps." Poirot's moustache quivered with a faint smile, a sign of gentle reproach. "Non, mon ami. You see, but you do not observe. A struggle? Perhaps. But this damage, it is too deliberate, too precise. Regardez." He held the compass to the light, its cracked glass catching the lantern's glow. The needle, bent at an unnatural angle, seemed to point accusingly at some unseen truth. The gilded casing, once a thing of beauty, bore a single deep gouge as if struck with a sharp, intentional force. Poirot traced the gouge with the magnifying glass, his brow furrowed in concentration. This mark, Hastings, was made by a tool, a knife, perhaps, or a chisel. Not the chaos of a struggle, but the work of a hand that meant to destroy. The compass was not merely broken, it was silenced. Hastings leaned closer, his curiosity piqued despite his skepticism. Silenced? You mean it was more than a navigational tool? Wentworth was an archaeologist, not a sailor. Why would a compass matter so much? Poirot set the compass down with care, as if it were a relic of great sanctity. Précisément, Hastings. This compass was no ordinary instrument. Professor Wentworth sought the tomb of Anoket, a treasure hidden not by maps, but by secrets. The compass, I believe, was his guide, a key to a location known only to him. Its destruction was meant to ensure that secret died with him. He rose, his movements fluid despite the cramped confines of the tent, and approached the professor's desk, still cluttered with the tools of his trade. Maps, star charts, and journals lay in orderly chaos, each page a testament to Wentworth's obsession. Poirot's fingers, delicate as a pianist's, lifted a leather-bound journal, its cover worn from constant handling. He opened it to a page marked with a ribbon, his eyes scanning the professor's precise script. "Listen, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low with the weight of discovery. "Wentworth writes, 'The compass is my lodestar, its needle attuned to the anomaly near the oasis. Without it, the tomb remains a myth. I fear Crane suspects its purpose. I must be vigilant.' This was written 3 days ago." Hastings' eyes widened. "An anomaly? You mean something magnetic, like a buried metal structure? And Crane knew about it?" Poirot nodded, closing the journal with a soft thud. "Exactement. The compass was no mere trinket. It was calibrated, perhaps, to a magnetic field unique to the tomb's location. Wentworth guarded it jealously, and someone, perhaps Dr. Crane, sought to ensure it would never lead him to his prize." Hastings scratched his chin, his practical mind grappling with the implications. "So, the murderer poisoned Wentworth and smashed the compass to keep the tomb hidden. But why not just steal it? Why destroy it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of insight in their depths. "An excellent question, mon ami. To steal the compass would be to admit its value, to risk another finding its secret. To destroy it suggests panic or misdirection. The murderer wished us to believe the compass was broken in a struggle, or that its purpose was lost, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived." He returned to the compass, lifting it once more to examine the shattered glass. A tiny fragment, caught in the casing's edge, glinted differently. A trace of residue, faint but unmistakable. Poirot sniffed it cautiously, his nose wrinkling. "A chemical, Hastings. Not sand, not dust, but something else. Perhaps a residue from the poison, or from the tool used to break the compass. We must have this analyzed, but for now, it is another thread in the tapestry." Hastings, ever eager to act, suggested, "Shall we search the camp for a knife or chisel? Or question Crane again? He's the obvious suspect, with that note about him in the journal." Poirot held up a hand, his expression one of patient caution. "Not yet, Hastings. The obvious is often a trap. Dr. Crane is ambitious, yes, but ambition alone does not make a murderer. We must consider Amira, with her knowledge of the desert's secrets, and Yusuf, whose fear betrays more than he says. Each has a role in this drama, and we must understand their parts before we accuse." He placed the compass in a small silk pouch, tucking it into his pocket with the reverence of a priest handling a relic. "Come, Hastings, let us walk the camp. The night is clear, and the stars, they may yet guide us as they guided Wentworth." Outside, the desert was a symphony of silence, broken only by the soft creak of canvas and the distant lowing of a camel. The tents stood like sentinels, their shadows long and jagged under the moonlight. Poirot's steps were measured, his gaze sweeping the ground as if the sand itself might yield a clue. Near Wentworth's tent, he paused, crouching to examine a patch of disturbed earth. The sand was scuffed, as if someone had stood there, perhaps watching or listening. A single footprint, half erased by the wind, caught his eye, a narrow sole, unlike the heavy boots of the expedition's members. "Curieux," Poirot murmured. "This print is fresh, yet delicate. Not the Professor's, nor Crane's, nor Yusuf's. A mirror, perhaps. Or another, unseen. Hastings squinted at the mark, barely visible in the dim light. Could be anyone, Poirot. The wind's been at it. You're not suggesting a fourth person in the camp, are you? Poirot rose, dusting his hands with a handkerchief. I suggest nothing, Hastings. I observe. The footprint is a question, and every question has an answer. We must find it. They continued their circuit, passing Crane's tent, where a lantern still burned, casting a flickering glow through the canvas. Amira's tent was dark, its entrance tied shut, as if to ward off intruders. Yusuf's belongings were near the camels, a simple bedroll under the stars, but he was nowhere to be seen. Poirot's brow furrowed, his mind cataloguing each detail. The light, the darkness, the absence. As they returned to Wentworth's tent, Poirot's attention fell on the teacup, still sitting on the desk. He lifted it again, tilting it to catch the light. A faint stain marred its rim, a residue not unlike the one on the compass fragment. The tea, Hastings, he said softly. It was the vehicle for the hair. Poison, I am certain. But who prepared it? Who delivered it? Amira admitted to bringing the Professor's tea each evening, yet she claims she left it outside. We must verify this. Hastings nodded, his enthusiasm tempered by the desert's oppressive stillness. I'll ask around tomorrow, Poirot. Someone must have seen something. But what about that footprint? It's nagging at me. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. It nags at me also, mon ami. But the footprint, the compass, the tea, they are but parts of the whole. The little grey cells, they work even now, arranging the pieces. Tomorrow we will speak with Amira and Yusuf again. Their stories, they must align with the truth, or they will unravel. The lantern's flame flickered, casting shadows that danced like spectres across the tent's walls. Poirot sat once more, his hands steepled, his mind a labyrinth of order and method. The broken compass, silent yet eloquent, lay at the heart of the mystery. Somewhere in the camp, a murderer believed their secret safe, buried in the sands of deception. But Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct, was already tracing the path to the truth. Chapter 4. The Rival's Ambition. The dawn broke over the Sahara with a merciless clarity, the sun's first rays piercing the horizon like a blade. Hercule Poirot, ever impeccable, despite the desert's relentless assault, stood outside his tent, his eyes fixed on the encampment as it stirred to life. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of dust and the distant bleat of a camel. Captain Arthur Hastings, bleary-eyed but resolute, joined him, his pith helmet slightly askew from a restless night. The shadow of Professor Wentworth's murder loomed larger with the light, and Poirot's mind, a machine of precision, was already turning over the threads of suspicion that wove through the camp. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low but commanding, "today we probe deeper. The compass, the poison, the footprint, they point to a motive rooted in greed or fear. Dr. Crane, with his ambition, is a man to watch. Let us pay him a visit." Hastings nodded, brushing sand from his jacket. "Crane's got a temper, Poirot. That note in Wentworth's journal, about Crane suspecting the compass's purpose, it's damning, isn't it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of cautious agreement. "Damning, perhaps, but not conclusive. The heart of a rival is a stormy sea, Hastings. We must navigate it with care. Come." Dr. Leonard Crane's tent stood apart from the others, its canvas taut and orderly, a reflection of the man's disciplined mind. Inside, the air was cool, the space organized with a precision that bordered on obsession. Shelves lined with labeled boxes held the artifacts of the expedition. Pottery fragments, bronze tools, and etched stones, each tagged with Crane's initials in a bold, angular script. A narrow camp bed, neatly made, stood in one corner, and a desk bore a single lantern, a notebook, and the small glass vial Poirot had noted the previous night, its smudged label reading cyanide, medical use only. Crane was seated at the desk, his hawkish features set in a scowl as he sorted through a stack of papers. He looked up as Poirot and Hastings entered, his grey eyes narrowing. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I trust you've come to apologize for your absurd accusations last night. Poison, indeed. Wentworth was a fool who pushed himself too far." Poirot's smile was serene, his hands clasped behind his back. "An apology, Dr. Crane?" "No, I think not. The little grey cells, they do not err. Professor Wentworth was poisoned, and the compass, his most precious tool, was broken with intent. You, monsieur, had reason to resent him. Your rivalry was no secret." Crane's fingers tightened on a pen, the knuckles whitening. "Rivalry? Of course we were rivals. Wentworth was a dreamer, chasing myths while I dealt in facts. His obsession with that tomb was madness." "But murder? You overstep, Poirot." Poirot's gaze drifted to the vial on the desk, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps, but let us speak of last night. You claim you were in your tent, cataloguing artifacts until midnight. Yet Yusuf, the porter, saw you near Wentworth's tent, carrying a vial not unlike this one. How do you explain this, monsieur?" Crane's face flushed, a vein pulsing at his temple. "Yusuf? That boy's a liar or a fool. I was here, as I said. The vial is for preserving specimens, standard practice in the field. You'll find no proof of your poison in it." Poirot stepped closer, his eyes locking with Crane's. "Proof, Doctor. Crane is a patient hunter. It waits for those who seek it. Tell me, what did you know of Wentworth's compass? He wrote that you suspected its purpose. Did you covet his secret? The path to the tomb of Anuket?" Crane laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the tent's confines. "That compass? A trinket for Wentworth's fantasies. He thought it would lead him to some mythical treasure. But it was just a tool. Broken now, like his dreams. If I wanted the tomb, I'd have found it without his nonsense." Poirot's head tilted. A gesture Hastings knew signaled a mental note. "And yet, monsieur, you were seen. Yusuf's eyes, they are young, but they see clearly. And this vial, it is curious, is it not, that it matches the description of one missing from the medical tent." Crane stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the ground. "Enough. You've no evidence, only the word of a nervous boy. I'm a scientist, not a murderer. If you want a culprit, look to Amira. She knows every path in this desert, every poison in the sand. Or Yusuf, skulking about like a thief. Leave me to my work." Poirot raised a hand, his tone soothing but firm. "Calm yourself, Doctor. Crane. Hercule Poirot does not accuse without certainty. But I observe, and I remember. We shall speak again." As they left the tent, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. That temper, it's like a cornered animal. And that vial, it's too perfect, isn't it?" Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the camp. "Too perfect, perhaps, Hastings. The vial is a clue, but is it the murderer's signature or a decoy? Crane's ambition burns brightly, but we must test its heat. Let us see what the others reveal." They walked toward the center of the camp, where the mess tent stood, its canvas flapping gently in the morning breeze. Amira was there, preparing a pot of tea with the same quiet precision she applied to her desert roots. Her dark eyes flicked up as Poirot approached, her expression guarded but polite. "Mademoiselle Amira," Poirot began, his tone gentle. "A moment, if you please. You delivered the professor's tea each evening, oui? Tell me of last night's ritual." Amira set the teapot down, her movements deliberate. "As always, Monsieur Poirot, I brewed the tea, chamomile, his favorite, and left the cup outside his tent at 9 o'clock. I did not enter. He preferred his solitude." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you saw no one near his tent? No movement? No shadow?" She shook her head, her braid swaying like a pendulum. "The camp was quiet. I went to scout the western route soon after. The desert demands vigilance, and I had my duties." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your duties, they are many. But the tea, did you notice anything unusual? A smell? A residue?" Amira's guesses held his, unwavering. "Nothing, Monsieur Poirot. It was tea, as always. If there was poison, it was not my doing." Hastings, unable to contain himself, blurted, "But you had access, Amira. You could have slipped something into the tea before leaving it." Her eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. "I could have, Captain, but I did not. The professor was kind to me. I had no reason to harm him." Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. "Enough, mon ami. Mademoiselle Amira, you have my thanks. We will speak again." As they moved away, Hastings muttered, "She's too calm, Poirot." "It's unnatural, and she had the perfect opportunity with that tea." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Calm, yes, but is it the calm of innocence or calculation? We must seek Yusuf now. His fear, it is a beacon in this mystery." They found Yusuf near the camels, his broad hands busy with a tangle of ropes. His eyes darted nervously as Poirot approached, and he stood, wiping sweat from his brow. "Monsieur Poirot," he stammered, I have work to do." Poirot's tone was soothing, almost paternal. "Of course, Monsieur Yusuf. But a moment, if you please. You saw Doctor Crane near Wentworth's tent last night, with a vial. Can you describe it? Its size, its shape?" Yusuf hesitated, his fingers twisting the rope. "It was small, like the one in the medical tent, glass, with a cork. I saw it in his hand, under the lantern light, but I was far off. I swear, I didn't lie." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "I believe you, monsieur. But tell me, why were you near Wentworth's tent? Your duties, they are with the camels, no?" Yusuf's face paled. I was checking the ropes, the stakes. The wind was strong. I heard a sound, like glass breaking, but I didn't go closer. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Poirot pressed, his gaze unrelenting. Yusuf's voice dropped to a whisper. "The desert, Monsieur Poirot. It watches. It punishes those who seek its secrets. The professor, he was warned, but he didn't listen." Poirot's brow furrowed, a new thread added to his tapestry. "Warned? By whom, Monsieur Yusuf?" Yusuf shook his head, his eyes wide. "I don't know. I heard him talking, days ago, about a warning. He said the tomb was cursed, that it would claim those who sought it." Poirot stepped back, his mind racing. "Merci, Yusuf. You have been most helpful. Return to your work, but stay close." As they walked back to their tent, Hastings said, "A warning, Poirot." "A curse? This is getting stranger by the minute. Do you think Yusuf's telling the truth?" Poirot's expression was thoughtful. "Truth, Hastings, is like the sand, ever shifting. yet solid beneath. Yusuf is afraid, but his fear may be of the murderer, not a curse. Crane's vial, Amira's tea, Yusuf's warning, they are pieces of the puzzle. We must find how they fit. The sun climbed higher, its heat pressing down on the camp. Poirot's mind, however, was cool and clear, arranging the clues with the precision of a master weaver. The rival's ambition burned brightly. But was it the flame of murder? The desert held its secrets, but Hercule Poirot was determined to unearth them. Chapter 5. The Guide's Silence. The midday sun scorched the Sahara, its relentless glare transforming the encampment into a shimmering mirage. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the heat, stood at the edge of the camp, his immaculate suit a defiant contrast to the dishevelled landscape. His green eyes, keen as ever, followed the faint trail of Amira's footprints leading toward the dunes, where she had vanished to scout the western oasis. Captain Arthur Hastings, wiping sweat from his brow, adjusted his pith helmet and muttered, "Blasted heat, Poirot." "How do you stay so composed?" Poirot's moustache curved in a faint smile. "The mind, Hastings, is a cool oasis, even when the body is tested. Amira, our guide, she knows this desert as a poet, knows his verses. Her silence, it is a poem we must decipher." The mess tent, where they had last seen Amira preparing tea, was now empty, its canvas walls rippling in the breeze. Poirot led the way to the campfire just outside, where a small iron kettle still hung over smouldering embers. Amira sat cross-legged on a woven mat, her dark robes blending with the shadows cast by the flames. Her hands, steady and precise, were arranging a bundle of dried herbs, their faint aroma mingling with the desert's dusty tang. She looked up as Poirot approached, her eyes like polished obsidian, revealing nothing. "Mademoiselle Amira," Poirot began, his voice smooth as silk. "You are the heart of this expedition, guiding its path through the sands. Yet, in the matter of Professor Wentworth's death, you offer only silence. I would hear your thoughts, if you please." Amira set the herbs aside, her movements deliberate. "I have told you what I know, Monsieur Poirot. I brought the professor his tea, left it outside his tent, and went to scout the oasis. The desert doesn't care for our tragedies. It demands we move forward." Poirot's head tilted, a gesture Hastings recognized as a prelude to probing. "Précisément, mademoiselle. The desert moves forward, but it keeps its secrets. You say you left the tea outside, yet the professor was poisoned and his compass broken. Did he ever speak to you of this compass, its true purpose?" Amira's fingers paused, a fleeting hesitation that Poirot noted like a hawk spotting prey. "He called it his lodestar," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. "He said it was crafted for more than navigation, but he shared little. He trusted no one, not even me." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the faint tremor in her tone. "And yet, mademoiselle, you were close to him. You brought his tea. You guided his paths. Did you see no one near his tent that night? No shadow? No sound?" Her gaze met his, unflinching. "The night was dark, Monsieur Poirot. I saw only the stars, and heard only the wind. If there was a shadow, it was not mine." Hastings, unable to resist, interjected. "But you could have tampered with the tea, Amira. You had the chance, and you know the desert's poisons, plants, roots, things we'd never suspect." Amira's eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. "You accuse without proof, Captain. I know the desert's ways, yes, but I used them to guide the professor, not to harm him. He was a good man, seeking knowledge, not gold. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. "My friend is eager, mademoiselle, but his question is fair. The tea was the vessel of the poison, and you were its bearer. Tell me, did you prepare it yourself? Or did another have access?" Amira's lips pressed into a thin line. "I brewed it in the mess tent, as always. The kettle was there, the herbs from our supplies. Anyone could have touched it after I left it outside his tent. I did not linger." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. "And the professor's warning, mentioned by Yusuf. Did he speak of it to you? A curse, perhaps, or a threat?" For the first time, Amira's composure wavered, her fingers tightening around the mat. "He spoke of danger, yes, but not to me directly. I overheard him once, muttering about a warning. A note, perhaps, or a word from someone in the camp. He said the tomb would claim those who sought it unwisely." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of a new thread in his tapestry. "A note, mademoiselle? This is most interesting. Did you see such a note, or know who might have sent it?" She shook her head, her braid swaying. "No, Monsieur Poirot. He kept his papers private. If there was a note, it would be in his tent." Poirot's smile was gentle, but his eyes were unrelenting. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your words are like the desert, vast yet revealing in their silences. We shall speak again." As they walked away, Hastings muttered, "She's hiding something, Poirot." "That pause when you mentioned the compass. It's as if she knows more than she's letting on." Poirot's expression was thoughtful. "Perhaps, Hastings, Amira is a woman of the desert, her secrets as deep as its sands. But is her silence that of guilt or of loyalty to another? We must return to Wentworth's tent. This note, if it exists, may hold the key." The professor's tent was as they had of it, the air still heavy with the scent of death. The camp bed, the cluttered desk, the broken compass, all remained untouched, as if time itself had paused in reverence. Poirot approached the desk, his gloved fingers sifting through the papers with the precision of a surgeon. Maps, star charts, and journals lay in orderly disarray, but among them, tucked beneath a leather blotter, was a single sheet of paper, its edges frayed. Poirot unfolded it carefully, his eyes scanning the scrawled words. "Leave the tomb to the sands, or the sands will claim you." The handwriting was crude, unlike Wentworth's meticulous script, and the paper bore faint traces of sand, as if it had been carried from the dunes. Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Good heavens, Poirot. A warning, just as Yusuf said. But who wrote it? Crane trying to scare Wentworth off? Or someone else?" Poirot folded the note, slipping it into his pocket. "The hand is unfamiliar, Hastings, but its purpose is clear, to frighten, to deter. Yet Wentworth did not heed it. He pressed on, and so he died. This note, it is another piece of the puzzle, but it raises questions. Was it a genuine warning, or a prelude to murder?" He turned to the teacup, still sitting on the desk, its contents now congealed. Poirot lifted it, tilting it to catch the light. The faint residue on the rim, noted earlier, seemed to match the chemical trace on the compass fragment. "The tea, Hastings," he murmured. "It was poisoned, I am certain. But by whom? Amira prepared it, but she claims she left it outside. Could another have tampered with it?" Hastings frowned. "Crane was seen near the tent, Poirot. And that vial in his tent. It's suspicious. But Amira's story is too neat, too practiced. And what about Yusuf's fear? He's jumpy as a rabbit." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark, of insight in their depths. Each suspect, Hastings, is a mirror reflecting part of the truth. Crane's ambition blinds him, Amira's silence shields her, and Yusuf's fear betrays him. But the note, it suggests another hand, or a deeper game. We must search further. They stepped outside, the sun now high, its heat pressing down like a physical weight. The camp was quiet, the other members occupied with their tasks. But Poirot's gaze lingered on Amira's tent, its entrance still tied shut. "Mademoiselle Amira knows more than she says," he said softly. "Her loyalty to Wentworth. It is genuine, but is it to his memory or to his secret? We must watch her closely." Hastings nodded, his mind racing. "And the note, Poirot? Shall we confront Crane with it, or Yusuf?" Poirot shook his head, his expression one of patient strategy. "Not yet, mon ami. The note is a card to be played with care. For now, we observe, we listen. The guide's silence is a veil, but Hercule Poirot will lift it to reveal the truth." The desert stretched before them, its dunes silent witnesses to the drama unfolding in their shadow. The broken compass, the poisoned tea, the cryptic note, all were threads in a tapestry of murder, and Poirot, with his unerring method, was determined to weave them into a pattern of justice. Chapter 6. The Porter's Fear. The Sahara's afternoon sun blazed with unyielding ferocity, casting stark shadows across the encampment and baking the sand to a searing crust. Hercule Poirot, his suit still improbably pristine, stood near the camel enclosure, his sharp green eyes fixed on Yusuf, the young porter, who was wrestling with a tangled harness. The air hummed with the low grumble of camels and the faint rustle of wind-stirred canvas. But Poirot's focus was singular, his mind a crucible where the molten clues of Professor Wentworth's murder were being forged into clarity. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, fanned himself with his pith helmet, his face flushed with heat and impatience. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice tinged with exasperation. "This heat is unbearable, and Yusuf's as skittish as a colt. Do you really think he's got anything to do with this? He seems too frightened to harm a fly." Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement or calculation. "The fly, Hastings, is harmless until it bites. Fear, it is a powerful force. Sometimes it drives a man to silence, sometimes to action. Yusuf's fear, it is a beacon in this desert of deception. Let us see where it leads." Yusuf, broad-shouldered and barely past 20, worked with feverish intensity, his hands trembling as he knotted the harness. His dark eyes flicked up as Poirot approached, and he froze, the rope slipping from his fingers like a lifeline cut loose. "Monsieur Poirot," he stammered, his voice barely rising above the camel's complaints. I have much to do. The animals, they need tending." Poirot's smile was gentle, almost fatherly, but his gaze was as piercing as the desert sun. "Of course, Monsieur Yusuf, your duties, they are many. But a moment, if you please. The death of Professor Wentworth weighs heavily on this camp, and you, I sense, carry a burden beyond your tasks. Tell me, what did you see last night, near the professor's tent?" Yusuf's hands resumed their work, but the tremor in them was unmistakable. "I told you, monsieur. I was with the camels, repairing a saddle. I heard a sound, glass breaking maybe. But I was far off. I saw nothing clear." Poirot stepped closer, his small stature somehow commanding the space between them. "Nothing clear, you say? Yet you saw Dr. Crane with a vial in his hand near the professor's tent. This is precise, non? Describe this vial again, if you please. its shape, its size, its gleam in the lantern light. Yusuf's eyes darted to the ground, as if seeking refuge in the sand. It was small, glass with a cork stopper. I saw it only for a moment in his hand, under the light near the tent. I didn't want to get closer. It was late, and I was uneasy. Uneasy, Poirot repeated, his voice soft but insistent, like a breeze that carries a warning. And why, Monsieur Yusuf? The desert is your home, its rhythms familiar to you. What made you uneasy that night? Yusuf's fingers tightened around the harness, his knuckles paling. The professor. He was different lately. He spoke of warnings, of danger. I heard him, days ago, saying the tomb was cursed, that those who sought it would pay a price. I thought, maybe the desert was angry. Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected, "A curse? Come now, Yusuf, you don't believe in that nonsense, do you? Surely it was a man, not a myth, who killed Wentworth." Yusuf's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a fear that seemed to pulse like a living thing. "You don't understand, Captain. The desert, it watches. It knows. The professor, he was warned. But he kept searching. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen." Poirot's brow furrowed, a new thread weaving into his tapestry of clues. "You told him to stop, oh, Monsieur Yusuf. When was this, and what did you say?" Yusuf hesitated, his breath catching. 2 days ago, monsieur. I was helping him with his maps. He was excited, talking about the compass and the oasis. I said the tomb was dangerous, that my people, Bedouin stories, say it's guarded by spirits. He laughed, but I saw fear in his eyes. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. "And this warning you speak of, who gave it to him? A note, perhaps, like the one we found, or a word from another?" Yusuf shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, monsieur. He didn't say. But he was afraid, always checking his tent, guarding that compass like it was his life." Poirot nodded, his fingers brushing the silk pouch in his pocket where the broken compass rested. "Merci, Yusuf. Your words, they are like stars in the night, small but guiding. Return to your camels, but stay near. The truth, it is close." As they walked away, Hastings muttered, "He's terrified, Poirot." But of what? A curse? Or someone in the camp? Or that story about warning Wentworth? It's odd, don't you think? Poirot's expression was thoughtful, his eyes scanning the horizon, where the dunes met the sky. "Odd, yes, Hastings, but revealing. Yusuf's fear is not merely of myths. He knows something, or suspects it. His warning to Wentworth, it was sincere. But was it born of folklore or observation? We must return to the professor's tent. There are secrets yet to uncover." Wentworth's tent was a shrine to his obsession, its cluttered desk a map of his mind. Poirot approached the stack of journals, his gloved fingers flipping through pages with the precision of a watchmaker. A single entry, dated 4 days prior, caught his eye. Yusuf speaks of curses, but his fear is real. I found a note slipped under my tent flap, crude, threatening. Someone knows I am close. The compass must be protected. Poirot closed the journal, his mind racing. "The note, Hastings. It is as Yusuf hinted and as Amira suggested. Someone in this camp sought to frighten Wentworth, to stop his quest. But when fear failed, murder followed." Hastings frowned, his practical mind struggling to keep pace. "But who, Poirot? Crane's the obvious choice. He's got the motive, the vial, and Yusuf saw him. But Yusuf himself, he's so nervous, it's almost as if he's hiding something. And Amira, with her tea, she's too calm for my liking." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Each, Hastings, is a thread in the weave. Crane's ambition is a fire, but is it the flame of murder? Amira's silence is a shield, but for whom? And Yusuf, his fear, it is a mirror reflecting something he has seen or heard. We must look closer at the professor's belongings. The note, the compass, the tea. They are linked. He turned to a small wooden box on the desk, its lid carved with intricate patterns. Inside, nestled among maps and star charts, was a single item, a tiny brass key, no larger than a finger joint, its head shaped like a crescent moon. Poirot lifted it, his eyes gleaming with discovery. Curieux, Hastings, a key hidden among Wentworth's papers. For what lock, I wonder? Hastings peered at it, puzzled. A key? For the compass, maybe? Or something at the tomb? Poirot's fingers closed around the key, his mind a whirl of possibilities. Perhaps, mon ami, the compass was the guide, but this key, it may be the final step to the tomb's secret. We must keep it safe, and we must learn its purpose. They stepped outside, the sun now dipping toward the horizon, painting the dunes in hues of amber and violet. The camp was stirring, the other members preparing for the evening meal. But Poirot's attention was drawn to Yusuf's bedroll near the camels. A small bundle, wrapped in cloth, lay half hidden beneath it. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand lifting the cloth to reveal a leather pouch, its contents rattling softly. Inside was a collection of small tools, a chisel, a knife, and a pair of pliers, each marked with wear. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he examined the chisel, its tip bearing a faint scratch that matched the gouge on the compass's casing. Most interesting, Hastings. These tools, they belong to Yusuf, the porter, and this chisel, it may be the instrument that silenced the compass. Hastings gasped. Yusuf! But he's so young, so scared. Could he really be the murderer? Poirot rose, dusting his hands with a handkerchief. Do not be hasty, Hastings. The chisel is a clue, but not a verdict. Yusuf's fear may be that of a witness, not a killer. Someone used this tool, or wished us to think so. We must tread carefully, for the truth is like the desert wind, elusive but ever-present. As they returned to their tent, the stars began to emerge, a celestial map that had guided Wentworth's dreams. Poirot's mind, however, was fixed on the earth, on the chisel, the key, the note, and the porter's trembling hands. The murderer believed their secret safe, buried in the sands of fear, but Hercule Poirot, with his unerring method, was closing in on the heart of the mystery. Chapter 7. The Poison's Path. The Sahara's twilight draped the encampment in a soft veil of indigo, the dunes glowing faintly under the emerging stars. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, stood outside the medical tent, his green eyes fixed on the canvas flap, as if it might whisper secrets. The air was cooling, carrying the faint scent of burning wood from the campfire, but the weight of Professor Wentworth's murder pressed heavier than the desert's heat. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, hovered nearby, his face etched with the strain of their relentless pursuit. The broken compass, the cryptic note, the chisel in Yusuf's bundle, all were threads in a tapestry Poirot was determined to unravel. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice a precise murmur. The poison that claimed the professor is the heart of this crime. We must trace its path, from its source to the teacup. Come! The medical tent may hold answers. Hastings adjusted his pith helmet, his brow furrowed. Right, Poirot. That vial in Crane's tent. It's got to be the key. Cyanide, you said, matches the symptoms. But how did it get into the tea? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of cautious deliberation. Patience, mon ami. The vial is a clue, but the truth lies in the details, how the poison was delivered, and by whom. Let us see what the medical tent reveals. The medical tent was a small, orderly space, its shelves lined with bottles, bandages, and instruments, all meticulously labelled by the expedition's unseen physician, who had left for Cairo days before Wentworth's death. A wooden cabinet, secured with a simple latch, held the more dangerous supplies. Poirot opened it, his gloved fingers moving with the precision of a jeweller. Among the vials of antiseptic and painkillers, one slot was conspicuously empty, its label reading cyanide, for emergency use. A faint scratch marked the wood where the vial had been removed, the dust disturbed, as if by a recent hand. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Voilà, Hastings, the missing vial. It matches the one in Dr. Crane's tent, n'est-ce pas? But its absence here is telling. Anyone in the camp could have taken it. The latch is no barrier to a determined hand. Hastings frowned, peering into the cabinet. Anyone, Poirot? That's the trouble. Amira made the tea, Crane had the vial, and Yusuf's got that chisel. They're all tangled up in this. Poirot nodded, his mind a labyrinth of connections. Précisément. The poison's path is not a single line, but a web. Let us return to Wentworth's tent. The teacup, it may yet speak. The professor's tent was as they had left it, a shrine to his unyielding quest for the tomb of Anoket. The teacup sat on the desk, its contents now a congealed sludge, the faint, bitter scent still lingering. Poirot lifted it, tilting it to catch the lantern's light. The residue on the rim, noted earlier, was a pale crust, its texture suggesting more than mere tea leaves. He scraped a small sample onto a glass slide, his movements meticulous, and tucked it into a silk pouch beside the broken compass. This residue, Hastings, he said. It is the poison's signature. Cyanide, I suspect, but we must confirm. The professor drank this tea, and within hours he was dead. But who placed the poison? Amira? Who brewed it? Crane, seen near the tent? Or Yusuf, whose fear hides a secret? Hastings rubbed his chin, his practical mind wrestling with the possibilities. Amira said she left the tea outside, Poirot. That means anyone could have tampered with it after she walked away. Crane's the likely culprit, with that vial. But Yusuf's tools, they're suspicious too. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Suspicious, yes, but suspicion is not proof. The tea was prepared in the mess tent, left outside Wentworth's tent, and consumed within the hour. The poison, it was added with care, not haste. We must recreate the moment. They moved to the mess tent, where the iron kettle still hung over the now cold campfire. Poirot examined it, noting the faint stains on its rim, similar to those in the teacup. He sniffed the interior, his nose wrinkling at a trace of bitterness beneath the camomile's floral notes. The kettle, Hastings. It, too, bears the poison's mark. Amira brewed the tea here, but did she add the cyanide, or did another tamper with it later? Hastings, eager to act, suggested, Let's ask Amira again, Poirot. She's too calm about this whole thing. And what about that note Yusuf mentioned? Could it be connected to the poison? Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind turning to the cryptic note found in Wentworth's tent. Leave the tomb to the sands, or the sands will claim you. The note, Hastings, is a shadow cast by the crime. It warned Wentworth, but he pressed on. The poison was the final step when fear failed. Let us speak with Amira once more, but first we must consider the timing. He paced the mess tent, his small frame moving with the grace of a dancer. Amira prepared the tea at 9 o'clock, she says. Yusuf saw Crane near Wentworth's tent at 10. The professor was found dead at dawn, the poison likely taking effect within an hour of consumption. This gives us a window, a narrow one, for the poison to be added. Hastings nodded, his enthusiasm growing. So, someone slipped the cyanide into the tea between 9 and 10. Crane's the obvious suspect. He was there, with the vial. But why break the compass? To cover his tracks? Poirot's fingers steepled, a sign of deep thought. The compass, Hastings, was the key to the tomb. Its destruction was meant to ensure the secret died with Wentworth, or to mislead us into believing it was lost. But the poison, it is the heart of the crime. We must find where it was obtained, and how it reached the tea. They returned to the medical tent, Poirot's attention drawn to a small logbook beside the cabinet. Its pages recorded the use of supplies, but the entries were sparse, the last dated a week ago. Curieux, Poirot murmured. No record of the cyanide's removal. The physician, he is in Cairo, but someone in this camp knew of the vial and took it. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, said, Crane's a scientist. He'd know about cyanide. But Amira, she knows the desert's plants. Could she have used something natural? Not the vial? Poirot shook his head, his expression one of patient correction. No, Hastings. The symptoms, blue lips, rigidity, are unmistakable. Cyanide, not a plant, killed Wentworth. But your thought is not without merit. Amira's knowledge, it is vast. We must ask her of the kettle, the tea, and the night. They found Amira near her tent, mending a torn robe with deft stitches. Her dark eyes lifted as Poirot approached, her expression as unreadable as the dunes. Mademoiselle Amira, he began, his tone gentle but probing. The tea you prepared for the professor. It was brewed in the mess tent, oui? Did you leave the kettle unattended at any time? Amira's needle paused, a flicker of tension in her fingers. I brewed the tea as always, Monsieur Poirot. The kettle was in the mess tent, the herbs from our stores. I poured the cup and took it to his tent. I saw no one, touched nothing but the kettle and the cup. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. And the kettle, mademoiselle, was it left where others might reach it? Her eyes met his, steady but guarded. The mess tent is open to all. I cannot say who came after me, but I swear the tea was clean when I poured it. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. Merci, mademoiselle. One last question. The note found in Wentworth's tent, warning of the tomb's curse. Did you ever see such a note, or hear of its sender? Amira's lips parted, then closed, a shadow crossing her face. I heard him speak of a warning, but I saw no note. He was afraid, Monsieur Poirot, but he would not turn back. The tomb was his life. Poirot stepped back, his smile polite but distant. Your words, they are most helpful. We shall speak again. As they walked away, Hastings muttered, She's hiding something, Poirot. That pause about the kettle? It's suspicious. And the note? She knows more than she's saying. Poirot's expression was thoughtful, his eyes fixed on the stars now dotting the sky. Perhaps, Hastings, Amira's silence is a fortress. But every fortress has a gate. The poison's path is clear, through the kettle, to the tea, to the professor. But the hand that placed it, that is the question. Crane's vial, Yusuf's chisel, Amira's tea, they are pieces of a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will fit them together. The night deepened, the camp settling into an uneasy quiet. The stars, once Wentworth's guide, shone coldly above, indifferent to the drama below. Poirot's mind, however, burned with purpose, tracing the poison's path through the sands of deception, ever closer to the truth. Chapter 8. The Star Chart. The Sahara night was a tapestry of stars, each pinprick of light a silent witness to the secrets buried in the sands below. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the flickering glow of a lantern, stood within Professor Wentworth's tent, his green eyes fixed on a worn star chart spread across the cluttered desk. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and the lingering bitterness of poisoned tea, a reminder of the crime that had shattered the expedition's purpose. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at Poirot's side, shifted uncomfortably, his pith helmet tucked under his arm as he peered at the chart's intricate lines. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice tinged with impatience, "this chart, it's all lines and dots to me. How can it help us catch a murderer? The poison, the compass, that note, they're what matter, surely." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his amusement at Hastings' practicality. "Mon ami, you see the surface, but not the depths. This chart, it was Wentworth's guide, as vital as the compass itself. The stars, they led him toward the tomb of Anuket, and the murderer sought to stop that journey. Let us examine it and closely, for it may yet point to the truth." The chart, its edges frayed from frequent handling, depicted a constellation visible only in this region of the Sahara, its stars marked with precise coordinates that converged on a point labeled Oasis. Of Khamsin Wentworth's annotations, written in his meticulous script, noted a magnetic anomaly near the oasis, a phenomenon he believed the Gilded Compass was uniquely calibrated to detect. A single sentence, underlined in bold ink, caught Poirot's eye. "The compass and the chart are one. Without both, the tomb is lost." Poirot's fingers traced the coordinates, his mind a whirl of connections. "This chart, Hastings, is more than a map of the heavens. It is a map of Wentworth's obsession. The compass, with its special calibration, was meant to align with this anomaly. A buried marker, perhaps, or a hidden structure. The murderer broke the compass to ensure the tomb remained hidden, but the chart survives. It is a clue they could not destroy." Hastings frowned, his practical mind grappling with the implications. "So, the killer wanted the tomb for themselves? Crane, then. He's got the motive, with his rivalry and that vial. But why not take the chart, too?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of insight in their depths. "An excellent question, mon ami. To take the chart would reveal its value, perhaps drawing attention to the murderer's intent. To break the compass was a subtler act, meant to suggest accident or struggle, while leaving the chart to mislead. But the chart, it speaks to those who listen." He folded the chart carefully, slipping it into his pocket beside the silk pouch containing the broken compass and the tiny brass key. "We must summon the others, Hastings. The chart, it will stir them, and in their reactions, we may see the truth." The mess tent was lit by lanterns, their warm glow casting long shadows across the faces of the expedition's remaining members. Dr. Leonard Crane sat with his arms crossed, his hawkish features set in a scowl. Amira, the Bedouin guide, stood near the entrance, her dark eyes steady but guarded. Yusuf, the young porter, fidgeted with a tin mug, his broad shoulders hunched as if to shrink from scrutiny. Poirot stood at the head of the table, the star chart spread before him like a challenge. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, The death of Professor Wentworth was no accident. He was poisoned, his compass broken, to halt his quest for the tomb of Anuket. This chart, he tapped the paper with a gloved finger, was his guide linked to the compass's secret. One of you knows why it was destroyed, and why Wentworth had to die. Crane's laugh was sharp, cutting through the tense silence. This is nonsense, Poirot. That chart is a fantasy, like Wentworth's dreams. The tomb is a myth, and I've no time for myths. If you want a murderer, look to those who skulk in the shadows, Amira with her desert tricks, or Yusuf with his nervous glances. Amira's eyes narrowed, but her voice was calm. You accuse easily, Dr. Crane, but your own ambition is no secret. The professor trusted this chart, and it led him closer to the tomb than you ever came. Yusuf's mug clattered to the table, his voice trembling. I don't know anything about charts or tombs. I just carried the loads, did my work. The professor, he was kind, but the desert, it's dangerous. Poirot's gaze swept over them, noting each reaction. Crane's defiance, Amira's restraint, Yusuf's fear. The desert is indeed dangerous, Monsieur Yusuf, but so is the human heart. This chart points to the oasis of Khamsin, where a magnetic anomaly awaits. The compass was meant to find it, but it was broken. Why? To keep the tomb hidden, or to claim it for another? Crane stood, his chair scraping against the ground. You're chasing shadows, Poirot. If Wentworth was close to the tomb, good for him. I didn't need his compass or his chart to prove myself. This is a waste of time. Poirot's smile was thin, his eyes unrelenting. Time, Doctor Crane, is never wasted when seeking the truth. You were seen near Wentworth's tent with a vial. The chart, it threatened your pride, non? Crane's face reddened, but he said nothing, turning to leave. Amira remained still, her gaze fixed on the chart, a flicker of something, sorrow perhaps, crossing her face. Yusuf stared at the table, his hands clenched. Poirot folded the chart, his voice softening. Merci, mes amis. You may go, but know this. The stars do not lie, and neither does Hercule Poirot. The truth, it is near. As the trio dispersed, Hastings whispered, Crane's rattled, Poirot. He's got to be our man. But Amira, she looked at that chart like it meant something personal. And Yusuf, he's practically shaking. Poirot nodded, his mind a labyrinth of order. Each reaction, Hastings, is a clue. Crane's anger masks fear, Amira's silence hides knowledge, and Yusuf's trembling suggests a secret. The chart, it stirs them all. We must visit the oasis of Khamsin. If the anomaly exists, it may confirm the chart's purpose, and the murderer's motive. They stepped outside, the night air cool against their skin. The stars above mirrored the chart's constellation, a celestial guide that had led Wentworth to his doom. Poirot's fingers brushed the pouch in his pocket, feeling the weight of the compass, the key, and now the chart. The oasis of Khamsin, Hastings, he said softly. It is there, I believe, that the tomb's secret waits, and perhaps the murderer's as well. Hastings, catching the glint in Poirot's eye, ventured, You're planning something, aren't you? A trap, maybe, to flush out the killer? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. A trap, perhaps, but first we observe. The stars, they guided Wentworth, and they will guide us. The murderer believes the compass's secret is lost, but Hercule Poirot sees what others do not. Tomorrow, we move forward. The camp settled into an uneasy silence, the lanterns dimming as the night deepened. The star chart, like the broken compass, was a silent witness to the crime, its lines pointing not just to a tomb, but to a truth Poirot was determined to uncover. The murderer, hidden among the dunes, would soon find their shadows exposed by the relentless light of his little grey cells. Chapter 9. The Night's Truth. The Sahara night enveloped the encampment in a profound stillness, broken only by the occasional snap of the campfire and the distant murmur of a restless camel. Hercule Poirot sat alone in his tent, the lantern's soft glow casting intricate shadows across his immaculate suit. The star chart, the broken compass, the tiny brass key, and the cryptic note lay before him on a folding table, each item a silent witness to Professor Wentworth's murder. His green eyes, sharp as polished jade, moved from one to another, his mind a crucible where the raw elements of the crime were being refined into truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, entered, his face etched with the fatigue of their relentless pursuit. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low to avoid disturbing the camp's fragile quiet. "It's late, and you're still at it. That chart, the compass, the note, they're driving me mad. Can't we confront Crane now? He's got the motive. The vial and Yusuf saw him." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint sign of amusement at Hastings's impatience. "Mon ami, to confront is to act, but to understand is to triumph. Dr. Crane is a man of ambition, yes, but the night's truth is deeper than one man's greed. Let us sit, and let the little grey cells work their method." Hastings pulled up a camp stool, his pith helmet resting on his knee. "All right, Poirot. But what's this night's truth you're on about? The poison in the tea, the broken compass. It all points to Crane, doesn't it? Or are you thinking Amira's hiding something with her cool demeanour?" Poirot steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on the star chart's delicate lines. "The truth, Hastings, is like the stars above, constant yet hidden until the darkness clears. The poison, the compass, the note, the key, they are pieces of a puzzle, but the picture they form is not yet complete. Tonight, we arrange these pieces, and we listen to what they say." He lifted the star chart, its annotations glowing faintly under the lantern's light. "This chart, it guided Wentworth to the oasis of Khamsin, where a magnetic anomaly awaits. The compass, with its unique calibration, was his key to that anomaly. Its destruction was no accident. It was meant to sever the path to the tomb of Anuket." Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed. "And the poison? It was in the tea, you said. Amira brewed it, but she claims she left it outside. Crane was seen nearby, and Yusuf heard the glass breaking. It's got to be one of them, Poirot." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind sifting through the details. "The tea, yes, the cyanide. It was added after Amira left the cup outside. Wentworth's tent. The window is narrow, between 9 when she delivered it and 10 when Yusuf saw Crane. But the compass, its breaking was a separate act, deliberate and precise. The chisel in Yusuf's bundle, it matches the gouge, but is Yusuf the hand that wielded it?" Hastings leaned forward, his voice eager. "That chisel, it's a strong clue, Poirot. Maybe Yusuf's fear is guilt. He warned Wentworth about the tomb, said it was cursed. Could he have taken matters into his own hands to stop him?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his fingers brushing the tiny brass key. "A possibility, Hastings, but consider this. Yusuf's fear is visceral, not calculated. The chisel, it may have been used by another, left in his bundle to cast suspicion. And this key, hidden among Wentworth's papers, what lock does it open? The tomb, perhaps, or something closer?" He turned to the note, its crude scrawl stark against the worn paper. "Leave the tomb to the sands, or the sands will claim you." This warning, Poirot murmured. It was meant to frighten Wentworth, to halt his quest. But when he persisted, the poison followed. The note's hand is not Wentworth's nor Crane's, whose script I have seen. Amira's writing I have not examined, and Yusuf's, his hands tremble too much to write so boldly. Hastings rubbed his chin, his mind racing. So, the note could be from anyone, or someone outside the camp. But that's impossible, isn't it? We'd have seen a stranger. Poirot's gaze drifted to the tent's canvas wall, as if seeing through it to the dunes beyond. Not impossible, Hastings, but unlikely. The camp is small, the desert vast. A stranger would leave traces, footprints, signs. The footprint we found, delicate and narrow, suggests someone within the camp, perhaps Amira. But the note's purpose, it was a prelude to murder, not a warning from afar. He rose, pacing the small space with measured steps, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us consider the motives, Hastings. Crane, his rivalry burns like the desert sun. He coveted Wentworth's discovery, perhaps to claim the tomb's glory for himself. Amira, her knowledge of the desert is unmatched. Did she seek the tomb for her own people, or to protect it from outsiders? Yusuf, his fear suggests he knows more than he says. Perhaps he witnessed the crime, or was coerced into aiding it." Hastings frowned, his practical mind struggling to keep pace. "Coerced? You think someone pressured Yusuf? But who? And why break the compass? If they wanted the tomb, wouldn't they keep it intact?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of insight breaking through. "Précisément, Hastings. The compass's destruction is the key to the murderer's mind. To keep it would reveal their intent to find the tomb. To break it suggests they wished to bury the secret, or to make us believe it was buried. But the chart remains, and the key, perhaps they did not know of it." He paused, his gaze returning to the star chart. "Tomorrow, we will visit the oasis of Khamsin. The anomaly, it may confirm the chart's truth and the murderer's motive. But tonight, we must watch. The camp sleeps, but the guilty do not rest easily." Hastings, catching the intensity in Poirot's voice, ventured, "You're planning something, aren't you? A trap, like you did in that Nile case? Get them all riled up and see who cracks." Poirot's smile was serene, his hands adjusting his cufflinks with fastidious care. "A trap, perhaps, but first we observe. The night's truth is in the silences, the glances, the shadows. Crane's anger, Amira's calm, Yusuf's fear. They are notes in a symphony, and Hercule Poirot will conduct it to its finale." They stepped outside, the air cool and sharp, the stars a brilliant canopy above. The camp was quiet, the tents dark save for a faint glow from Crane's, where he likely pored over his artifacts. Amira's tent was silent, its entrance tied shut, a fortress of secrecy. Yusuf's bedroll lay near the camels, but he was absent, perhaps tending to his duties or fleeing his fears. Poirot's gaze lingered on the dunes, where the wind sculpted patterns in the sand. "The oasis of Khamsin, Hastings," he said softly. "It is there that the truth may lie. The chart points to it, the compass was meant to find it, and the murderer sought to stop it. Tomorrow, we follow the stars." Hastings nodded, his enthusiasm tempered by the desert's eerie calm. "I hope you're right, Poirot. This place, it's like it's watching us, waiting for us to slip up." Poirot's eyes twinkled, reflecting the starlight. "Let it watch, mon ami. The desert may keep its secrets, but Hercule Poirot keeps none from the truth. The night's truth is close, and we shall seize it." The camp settled into its uneasy slumber, the stars above indifferent to the drama below. The star chart, the compass, the key, and the note lay in Poirot's tent, silent sentinels of a crime yet to be solved. But Poirot's mind, relentless and precise, was already charting the path to the murderer's heart, guided by the unerring light of his little grey cells. Chapter 10. The Confrontation. The Sahara dawn painted the dunes in hues of rose and gold, a fleeting beauty that belied the tension gripping the encampment. Hercule Poirot, his suit as pristine as ever, despite the desert's relentless dust, stood at the center of the mess tent, his small frame commanding the space like a general on a battlefield. The star chart, the broken compass, the tiny brass key, and the cryptic note rested on the trestle table before him, each item a silent accusation. Captain Arthur Hastings, his pith helmet clutched tightly, stood at Poirot's side, his face a mixture of anticipation and unease. The air was thick with the scent of a coffee and the weight of an imminent reckoning. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice low to avoid alerting the approaching suspects. "You're sure about this? Confronting them all at once. It's bold, even for you." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache curving in a faint, confident smile. "Boldness, mon ami, is the spark that ignites the truth. The murderer believes their secret safe, hidden in the sands of deception. But Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. Today, we lay the trap, and the guilty will reveal themselves." The flap of the mess tent parted, and the three suspects entered, their faces etched with varying shades of defiance, caution, and fear. Dr. Leonard Crane strode in first, his hawkish features set in a scowl, his grey eyes flashing with impatience. Amira, the Bedouin guide, followed, her dark robes flowing like the dunes, her expression calm but impenetrable. Yusuf, the young porter, trailed behind, his broad shoulders hunched, his hands fidgeting with a length of rope as if it were a talisman against scrutiny. Poirot raised a hand, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the morning stillness. "Mesdames et messieurs, be seated, if you please. The time has come to face the truth of Professor Wentworth's murder. A crime most foul has been committed, poison in his tea, a compass broken with intent, a secret buried in the sands. I, Hercule Poirot, have unravelled this mystery, and now I will reveal the hand that struck." Crane's laugh was sharp, a bark of disdain. "This is absurd, Poirot. You've been chasing ghosts since you arrived. Wentworth was a fool who pushed himself too far. Heat stroke, exhaustion, nothing more. Your talk of poison and broken compasses is pure fiction." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, his eyes locking with Crane's. "Fiction, Doctor." "Crane?" "No." The blue tinge of the professor's lips, the rigidity of his limbs, the bitter residue in his teacup. They speak of cyanide, administered with care. And the compass, its gilded casing gouged by a chisel, was no accident. It was the key to the tomb of Anuket, and you, monsieur, knew its value. Crane's face reddened, his fists clenching. "Preposterous. I'm a scientist, not a murderer. That compass was Wentworth's obsession, not mine. If you want a culprit, look to Amira. She brewed the tea, knows every poison in the desert. Or Yusuf, skulking about with his tools." Amira's voice was steady, her eyes fixed on Poirot. "I brewed the tea, yes, but I left it outside his tent, untouched. If there was poison, It was not my hand that placed it. Dr. Crane's accusations are a mirror of his own guilt." Yusuf's rope slipped from his fingers, his voice trembling. I didn't do anything, Monsieur Poirot. I saw Dr. Crane near the tent with a vial, but I swear I only heard the glass break. I was with the camels, doing my work." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the rising tension. "Enough, mes amis. Let us examine the facts with order and method. The professor was poisoned between 9 and 10 o'clock, when the tea was delivered and consumed. Amira prepared it, but left it outside. Dr. Crane was seen near the tent, a vial in hand. Yusuf heard the compass break, his chisel a match for the gouge. And this— He held up the star chart, its lines stark in the lantern light, guided Wentworth to the oasis of Khamsin, where a magnetic anomaly awaits. The compass was its key, and its destruction was meant to bury that secret. He turned to Crane, his voice sharp as a blade. "Doctor! Crane, your rivalry with Wentworth was a fire that consumed you. His success threatened your legacy. You knew the compass's purpose, for he wrote of your suspicion. You took the cyanide from the medical tent, slipped it into the tea after Amira left it, and broke the compass to ensure the tomb's location died with him." Crane surged to his feet, his chair toppling. "Lies! You have no proof, Poirot. That vial in my tent, it's for preserving specimens, not murder. Yusuf's the one with the chisel. Ask him why it was hidden in his bundle." Poirot's smile was thin, his eyes unwavering. The chisel, yes. A clever touch, perhaps, to cast suspicion on Yusuf. But the vial, Doctor. Crane. It matches the one missing from the medical tent. And this. He produced a small fragment of glass from his pocket, its edge glinting. Was found in your tent, a piece of the compass's shattered face. You were careless, monsieur. Amira's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise breaking her calm. Yusuf gasped, his hands trembling. Crane's face drained of color, his voice rising in desperation. "This is madness. I was in my tent, cataloguing artifacts. Yusuf's lying, or Amira's framing me. She knows the desert. She could have poisoned the tea before anyone noticed." Poirot stepped closer, his presence commanding despite his small stature. "Non, Doctor. Crane. Amira's tea was clean when she left it. Yusuf's chisel was used, but not by his hand. You, monsieur, entered Wentworth's tent at 10 o'clock, as Yusuf saw. You added the cyanide to the tea, knowing he would drink it soon. You struck the compass with the chisel, taken from Yusuf's tools to cast suspicion, and left the fragment of glass in your haste. Your ambition, it drove you to murder." Crane lunged forward, his voice a snarl. "You can't prove this, Poirot. It's your word against mine." But before he could reach Poirot, Hastings, with surprising agility, grabbed his arm, pinning it behind him. "Easy, Crane," Hastings said, his tone firm. "You're not helping yourself." Amira and Yusuf exchanged glances, relief washing over their faces. Poirot continued, his voice calm but relentless. "The note. Leave the tomb to the sands, or the sands will claim you. It was your attempt to frighten Wentworth, to make him abandon his quest. When he refused, you acted. The tomb's treasure. It was to be your triumph, Doctor. Crane, but it has become your downfall." Crane struggled against Hastings' grip, his defiance crumbling. "All right, damn you. I did it. Wentworth was a fool, hoarding that compass, that chart, as if he alone deserved the tomb. I wanted it, years of work, and he was going to steal my glory. I poisoned the tea, broke the compass to make it look like a struggle. But you'll never find the tomb without me." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice held no pity. "The tomb, Dr. Crane, is a prize for the honest, not the treacherous. You have confessed, and justice will follow." As Hastings bound Crane's wrists with a length of rope, Amira stepped forward, her voice low. "Monsieur Poirot, the professor, he would have wanted the tomb found, not for glory, but for knowledge. The chart, it can still guide us." Yusuf nodded, his fear giving way to resolve. "I'll help, mademoiselle," for the Professor Poirot folded the star chart, slipping it into his pocket. "The oasis of Khamsin awaits, mes amis. The truth of the tomb, it will be found, but not by the hand of a murderer." The tent fell silent, the weight of Crane's confession settling like dust. Outside, the dawn brightened, the dunes glowing with promise. Poirot's mind, ever precise, had unravelled the knot of deception, but the mystery of the tomb lingered, a final challenge in the sands. Chapter 11. The Desert's Secret. The Sahara's morning sun climbed higher, casting a golden sheen across the dunes that stretched endlessly beyond the encampment. Hercule Poirot stood at the camp's edge, his immaculate suit a defiant contrast to the wild landscape, his green eyes fixed on the horizon where the oasis of Khamsin lay hidden. The weight of Dr. Leonard Crane's confession still lingered, a dark cloud dispelled by the light of truth. Yet the mystery of the tomb of Anuket remained, its secrets tantalizingly close. Captain Arthur Hastings, his pith helmet firmly in place, joined Poirot, his face alight with the thrill of resolution tempered by curiosity about what lay ahead. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice buoyant despite the desert's heat, "you've done it again. Nailed Crane like a shot. But what now? That tomb. Do you really think we'll find it? And what about that key you found? It's got to mean something." Poirot's moustache curved in a serene smile, his fingers brushing the silk pouch in his pocket where the star chart, the broken compass, and the tiny brass key rested. "Mon ami, the murderer is unmasked, but the desert still holds its secrets. The tomb of Anuket, it was Wentworth's dream, and now it is our duty to honor it, not for glory, but for truth. The key, it is a final piece of the puzzle. Let us see where it leads." The camp was stirring, its rhythm altered by Crane's confession. Amira, the Bedouin guide, approached, her dark robes flowing like the sands, her eyes reflecting a quiet determination. Yusuf, the young porter, followed, his earlier fear replaced by a tentative resolve, his broad hand steady as he carried a pack of supplies. The air was charged with anticipation, the promise of discovery mingling with the aftermath of betrayal. "Mademoiselle Amira," Poirot began, his voice gentle but authoritative, "you know the oasis of Khamsin, its paths and its secrets. The star chart points to a magnetic anomaly there, where the professor believed the tomb lies. Will you guide us?" Amira's gaze met his, unwavering. "For the professor, Monsieur Poirot, I will guide you." He sought knowledge, not treasure. The tomb should be found for him, not for those like Crane. Yusuf nodded, his voice stronger than before. "I'll help, mademoiselle. The professor, he was kind to me. I want to see this through." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of approval in their depths. "Merci, mes amis. The desert is vast, but with your aid, we will find its heart. Let us prepare." The journey to the oasis was short, but arduous, the dunes rising like waves under the relentless sun. Amira led the way, her steps sure, her knowledge of the terrain as instinctive as a falcon's flight. Poirot, Hastings, and Yusuf followed, the star chart tucked safely in Poirot's pocket, its coordinates guiding their path. The broken compass, though useless now, remained a silent talisman, its gilded fragments a reminder of the crime that had brought them here. As they crested a final dune, the oasis of Khamsin appeared, a cluster of date palms and shimmering water, a jewel in the desert's harsh embrace. Amira pointed to a rocky outcrop near the oasis's edge, its surface weathered but oddly regular, as if carved by ancient hands. "There," she said, her voice low. "The professor spoke of this place. He said the compass would point to it." Poirot knelt beside the outcrop, his gloved fingers tracing its contours. The star chart's coordinates aligned precisely with this spot, and the professor's notes had mentioned a magnetic anomaly. A hidden marker, perhaps, or a buried structure. He produced the tiny brass key, its crescent moon head glinting in the sunlight. "This key, mademoiselle," he said. "Do you know what it might unlock?" Amira shook her head, her eyes fixed on the outcrop. "He never spoke of a key, Monsieur Poirot. But he was certain the tomb was here, hidden beneath the rock or sand." Hastings, ever practical, scanned the outcrop. "A key this small, it's got to be for something precise, like a lockbox or a mechanism. But where's the lock?" Poirot's mind, a labyrinth of order, turned over the clues, the chart, the compass, the key, the anomaly. He pressed his hand against the outcrop, feeling for irregularities. A faint seam, barely visible, ran along its base, concealed by centuries of sand. He brushed it away, revealing a small circular indentation, its center etched with a crescent moon symbol that matched the key's head. "Voilà," Poirot murmured, his voice alive with discovery. He inserted the key, turning it with a delicate twist. A soft click echoed, and a section of the outcrop shifted, revealing a narrow stone panel. With Yusuf's help, they slid it aside, exposing a dark, descending passage carved into the rock. Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot! The tomb! It's real! Wentworth was right all along." Poirot's smile was restrained, his eyes fixed on the passage. "The professor's dream, Hastings, was no myth, but we must proceed with care. The desert guards its secrets jealously." Amira lit a torch, its flame casting flickering shadows as they descended. The passage was cool, its walls etched with hieroglyphs that spoke of Anuket, a forgotten queen whose tomb had eluded seekers for millennia. At its end, a stone door bore another crescent moon lock. Poirot inserted the key once more, and the door swung open, revealing a chamber aglow with the glint of gold. The tomb of Anuket was a marvel, a sarcophagus of alabaster, surrounded by urns of lapis and gold, their surfaces etched with stories of a queen's reign. No jewels sparkled, no treasures beckoned. Instead, the chamber was a shrine to knowledge, its walls inscribed with astronomical charts and records of an ancient civilization. Wentworth's quest, Poirot realized, had been for this, a legacy of wisdom, not wealth. Amira's voice was soft, reverent. This is what he sought, not gold, but truth. He would have been content. Yusuf, his eyes wide, nodded. "For the professor, Monsieur Poirot. We should protect this. Tell the world." Poirot's gaze swept the chamber, his mind at peace. "Précisément, mes amis. The tomb will be preserved, its secrets shared with those who seek knowledge, not glory. Dr. Crane's ambition led to murder, but your honor has led to discovery." Hastings, still awestruck, ventured, "And Crane, Poirot?" He thought he'd buried the secret with Wentworth. What happens to him now? Poirot's expression hardened, his voice firm. Justice, Hastings. He will face the consequences in Cairo, where the authorities await. His greed was his undoing, but the tomb, it belongs to the world. They emerged from the passage, the oasis's palms swaying in the breeze. Amira and Yusuf began preparations to secure the site, their resolve a tribute to Wentworth's memory. Poirot stood apart, the star chart in his hands, its lines now a map of triumph rather than tragedy. "The desert's secret, Hastings," he said softly, "is not in its treasures, but in its truths. The little grey cells, they have served us well. The sun climbed higher, its light a promise of clarity. The tomb was found, the murderer unmasked, and the sands, for now, were at peace." Chapter 12. The Departure. The Sahara sun rose with a quiet majesty, bathing the encampment in a golden glow that softened the harsh edges of the dunes. Hercule Poirot stood at the camp's perimeter, his immaculate suit a testament to his unyielding order amidst the desert's chaos. His green eyes, sharp and reflective, surveyed the tents now being dismantled, their canvas folding like the pages of a closing book. The discovery of the tomb of Anuket and the unmasking of Dr. Leonard Crane as Professor Wentworth's murderer had brought a fragile peace to the expedition. But Poirot's work was done, and the call of Cairo beckoned. Captain Arthur Hastings, his pith helmet firmly in place, joined him, his face a blend of satisfaction and exhaustion. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice carrying the relief of a case solved, "you've pulled it off again. Crane in custody, the tomb found. It's a triumph. But I'll be dashed glad to leave this desert. Sand in my boots, heat in my bones. I'm ready for civilization." Poirot's moustache curved in a serene smile, his fingers adjusting his hat with fastidious care. "Mon ami, the desert is but a stage, and we have played our parts well. The truth, it shines brighter than the sun, and Hercule Poirot has brought it to light. But yes, Cairo awaits, with its comforts and its order." The camp was alive with activity. Amira, the Bedouin guide, oversaw the packing of supplies, her dark robes flowing as she moved with purpose. Her eyes, once guarded, now held a quiet pride, her resolve to protect the tomb's legacy unwavering. Yusuf, the young porter, worked beside her, his earlier fear replaced by a steady determination, his broad hands securing ropes with a newfound confidence. The star chart, the broken compass, and the tiny brass key, now safely stored in a locked case, were to be delivered to the authorities in Cairo, along with Crane, who sat sullenly under guard, his ambitions reduced to a bitter memory. Poirot approached Amira, his voice gentle but authoritative. "Mademoiselle Amira, you have honored the professor's memory. The tomb of Anuket, with its records of a lost civilization, will be preserved for the world. Your guidance was its key, as the compass was Wentworth's." Amira's gaze met his, her expression softened by gratitude. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. The professor sought knowledge, not glory. I will ensure his dream is shared, not plundered." Yusuf, pausing in his work, added, "We'll guard it, monsieur, for the professor, and for those who come after." Poirot nodded, a spark of approval in his eyes. "Précisément, mes amis. The desert yields its secrets to those who respect them. You have my trust, and my admiration." Hastings, watching the exchange, ventured, "And Crane, Poirot? He thought he'd buried the tomb's secret with Wentworth. What'll happen to him in Cairo?" Poirot's expression hardened, his voice firm. "Doctor, Crane will face justice, Hastings. His greed led to murder, and the law will judge him. The tomb, it was never his to claim, and now it belongs to history. The camels were loaded, their packs heavy with the expedition's gear and the precious artifacts. From the tomb, carefully catalogued for transport to Cairo's museum. Poirot's gaze lingered on the oasis of Khamsin, its palms a faint silhouette against the horizon. The star chart had led them there, the compass had pointed the way, and the key had unlocked the truth, not just of the tomb, but of the human heart's capacity for betrayal and redemption. As they prepared to depart, Poirot took a final walk through the camp, his steps measured, his mind reflecting on the case. The broken compass, its gilded casing shattered by Crane's chisel, the poisoned tea laced with cyanide from a stolen vial, the cryptic note, a failed warning that had preceded murder, and the tiny key, the final link to Anuqet's legacy. All had been pieces in a puzzle only his little grey cells could solve. Hastings, catching up, chuckled. "You're awfully quiet, Poirot. Thinking about the case, or just glad to be leaving this blasted sand?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, reflecting the morning light. "Both, mon ami. The case, it was a challenge to the order and method of Hercule Poirot, but the truth, it prevails. The compass was gilded, yes, but the truth shines brighter. And the sand, bah, it is no match for a good brush and a firm will." They mounted their camels, the beasts grumbling as they set off toward Cairo. The dunes stretched behind them, silent witnesses to a drama resolved. Amira and Yusuf waved farewell, their figures growing small against the vast desert, their mission to protect the tomb a new chapter in its ancient story. As the caravan moved forward, Poirot's thoughts turned to the stars that had guided Wentworth, and now guided him. "The desert, Hastings," he said softly. "It is a place of secrets, but no secret escapes Hercule Poirot. The little grey cells, they are the true compass, pointing always to the truth." Hastings grinned, the city's promise lifting his spirits. "To Cairo, then, Poirot, and a decent bath, I hope." Poirot's laughter, light and precise, carried on the breeze. "To Cairo, mon ami, and to the next adventure. For where there is mystery, there is Hercule Poirot, ready to bring order to the chaos." The sun climbed higher, the dunes fading into the distance, and the caravan moved on, leaving the desert's secrets to whisper among the sands, their truths now etched in the annals of justice.